I wanted to talk about your content in particular, which is that I feel like your content is some of the most creative out of the Raid Shadow Legends creators, where very often people are building around the game itself, but you somehow are able to use the game as sort of a canvas for your content. It's like, this is the game and the genre I'm in, but I will make stuff that's above and beyond just covering the game itself. And that's something I always really liked about you and really liked about your channel. So the question I have in particular in regards to that is, have you noticed the percentage of the reason your content is this way and is more creative is because you're not as into the game? Or do you think that's more naturally inspired by the type of creator you are, where this is just the type of content you lean into almost regardless?
It's a really good question. I appreciate that, by the way. I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. I started making the comedy videos when I was still very into Raid, and Plarium just kind of took that turn. Because when I first got to the game, I was a fan of Plarium. I liked what they were doing. I tended to defend the decisions that they made, and starting pretty much with Foley, the whole Foley fusion thing, is where the tone seemed to change. So I started to just kind of incorporate that stuff in. And I think one thing that has done is given me the ability to continue to make content, being as disinterested as I was in the game. Because for the last several months, I have just not been that involved. And I've tried to revive it a few times. And I've had moments where I'm like, all right, I kind of feel like I'm getting back into it. But it's just really hard to be invested in this game when every day you log into the Discord and see the updates from Plarium, and the news is just the same old bullshit or something else bad that they're doing. And it's like, there's nothing to be excited about anymore. It's the same shit. We have a summoning event calendar at this point. You know what I mean? The summon portal's always glowing. That's not fun. So I think on one hand, yeah, it's a product of not being as interested in the game, which is why I started to lean into it a lot more heavily. But also just ultimately what I want to do. Like, if I could do anything I wanted to do on YouTube, it would be that kind of content. So
what percentage of the fact that it becomes harder to create content due to negativity and the stuff you're not really liking around and getting bored of the game, how much percentage of that do we need to put on us as creators for being unable to push past into the creativity level of, I can make content regardless of how I feel about the game? And how much of that do you feel is very legitimized by the fact that Plarium itself has occasionally done a poor job at showing the audience that exists and allows its game to perpetuate, has done somewhat of a poor job at maintaining that feel-good environment back and forth. I don't think I've seen very many games where the audience and the creator of the game very often seem ahead. So obviously I've played Diablo more, though that is something that happened in that game as well. So I recognize that it's something not just acutely Plarium, but how much of that is on us as creators to be able to make content irregardless of the current space of the game?
I think it's probably a bit of a shared responsibility. I think it depends on the relationship that the developer creates with the content creators. And I think the relationship that Plarium has with the content creators is not good. I think even from an early phase, they would do this thing. You remember they used to do the shout outs. They did Stu and Chosen and Hell Hades. And then they stopped doing that. They'll occasionally do things with the content creators, but most of the time when something interesting happens, it was someone else's idea. I know Deadwood's been doing a series of clan boss challenges and Hydra challenges, and they'll post it on their Facebook and stuff, but they've got nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? They don't. The Raid Awards was some of the most interesting stuff that's happened in Raid. They had nothing to do with that. And the second time, they wanted to get involved and change stuff. It's like, it's not even yours to change. So
that happened, I think they with just the Raid Award show. I believe, not to interrupt, but I believe the Raid Award show is one such similar thing with Saffron Man, correct? That they were willing to plug it, but by plugging it, they wanted to have some manipulation of what was allowed in the event.
Right. Yeah, they wanted to start calling shots. It's like, you had nothing to do with this. It will go off fine without you. So, and then there's been an ongoing conversation with them about what news they give us and when they give it to us, and there's constantly stuff getting leaked that they give to the content creators to push out. And it doesn't really affect me much because I'm not a news channel. I don't care about announcing the next 10x. I don't care about announcing the next update. I'm not interested enough anymore. So none of that stuff affects me. And I never thought I was going to get a shout out from them anyway. So literally none of this has anything to do with what I want from them. But I just observe that they'll dangle this stuff in front of the creators, and then it'll just go away with no explanation. So they I don't know. They don't.
Does it sound like, do you innately believe on the teeter-totter of value provided? Do you believe Plarium is providing more value to the creators, or do you believe the creators are providing more value back to Plarium? Which way does that teeter-totter sag?
I have to think that the creators are doing more for Plarium than Plarium is doing for them. Aside from like Hell Hades, aside from the ones that got channel changing shout outs, you know what I mean? I think, but even then, I mean, that was a big thing for Hell Hades, but if Hell Hades doesn't stream on Twitch, Raid's numbers are noticeably different on Twitch.
No doubt.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt.
Those viewers won't go to somewhere else. Those viewers are on Hell Hades' channel. So if he doesn't stream, their numbers go down. If he stops making videos, there's a lot of viewers that don't go somewhere else. They go.
Or if Jgigs disappears into the dark as a Sith, and suddenly quits Raid Shadow Legends and has the light turned off on him there.
You saw that too.
I did. So I was trying to do a meme on it. I guess it didn't quite land properly, but I was giving it a shot there. No, I know what you're saying because, to be fair, the next shout out was supposed to be mine. I was number 3 on the list, and it never happened. And that was part of the reason I was salty. And that's some of the shout outs that did happen were to people that innately weren't even on the list, and I don't really want to get, because no matter how much I don't get along with certain people, I don't really, at this day and age, I'm trying to move past all that, so I'm not really interested in calling anybody out. But like some of the people that got the plugs and all that were people that innately weren't on the list. I do think that they earned the plugs. I don't have any problems with any of the people that got the plugs. I think everyone on the list earned the plug innately. But it did definitely change the dynamic, I feel like, in terms of how the creators were feeling about the program, when it's like some people get plugs, some people don't get plugs. And make no mistake, when you get a plug in the game, it's probably worth about $100,000 in terms of business performance. That is my estimation. I think that it's most likely worth about that amount.
It's a life-changing thing. And there's dozens of creators. There's no reason they can't do it once a month.
No doubt.
Throw a creator in the game, attach a pack to the milestones, and help them out. I get you got to be careful about it. You don't want to do it for someone that has been making content for 2 or 3 months, will get the shout out and quit. But you've got creators that have been around for the life of the game. And I know people are going to think I'm talking about me. I'm not. I know I'm not getting one. I don't have that kind of relationship with them. I don't make the kind of content that's conducive to be promoted by them. I understand that, and I'm not interested in it. But there's a lot of creators that have Cold Brew, Deadwood. There's a lot of guys that have been around for a while that I think deserve it.
Cold Brew is a great example. Deadwood's a fantastic example.
They've done so much for the game.
Not only the game, but I feel like people like Deadwood Jedi have the combination of being completely marketable, of being completely friendly, always professional, always adding value to the community, is beloved by the community. It is a PRW to work with somebody like Deadwood in every way you can look at it. I do want to give some credit to Plarium, though, because even though me, I'm Darth, I've had probably the biggest blow up with Plarium out of everybody. Maybe Dracogate was another such example of things that went south. But I've obviously had my ill will with Plarium. But I do believe out of the content creator programs I have been in, Plarium, besides Blizzard, to be fair, Blizzard's actually fairly insane with this as well. But out of the programs I've seen, there is very few programs that have enabled creators in the way that Plarium's content creation program. And I'm just saying that to be fair. Obviously, I have the same issues as well, but things like the in-game plug happening at all has been promised in multiple games to me at this point, none of which have delivered upon that aspect. The things, for instance, like actually plug in the social media. I have multiple thousands of Twitter followers that came from the fact that they did a Twitter plug that came to me, even though they were plugging the other things. So I am able to recognize the growth potential that has happened because of the things that Plarium has set me up to accomplish. And I don't want to diminish that, but I do think it's fair to say. Go on.
Well, I want to interject. I want to make sure that it doesn't sound like I only have negative things to say about them.
Sure.
I do think there's a lot of good stuff about the creator program too. I think they have the best like YouTube community managers I've ever dealt with.
Oh,
We've
fair.
gone through a couple, and the Banana right now, the current one, it's insane what a good job she does keeping up with all the creators, because it's got to be tough. It's got to be a tough job. She's excellent. I think they give the best in-game value to their creators to build champions and do things with. I think the content creator pack is insane given what they value these items at. I've never seen another game give items like that. You know what I mean?
No doubt. I mean, there was times before that creator program was established where it was kind of a free for all. I would message and be like, "Hey," and I don't think I received more resources before than after. I think the creator program actually was better later on. But there was times that I would message like, "Hey, the Fiddlesticks looking character, like I can't book him. I don't have the money to book him IRL. It's not like we make tons and tons and tons of money as as a YouTuber, unless you're way bigger than the sizes of our channels. So it's like I literally can't make a video on this champion if I want to, and they would give me legendary books. Like, here's 16 legendary books. Go ahead and book that champion. And I'm able to like recognize that is profitability on my side of a YouTube channel from the fact they've been able to do that. And as time has gone on, and I've been, and I've had moments where I've been very mad at the business connections, and I've gone and experienced other business connections, and I've also grown up and become more adult in times. I'm able to look back and be like, I have definitely like been worse to them than they deserved at certain times, but I've also seen them make some very questionable decisions, I would say more at the community at large targeted than even us creators. And I feel like a lot of times us creators, and maybe I'm standing in my grandstand, I'm wrong, and you're welcome to call me out, but I feel like us creators, we're sort of arbiters of the community's opinions and stuff, but very often the things we're mad about are things that all of the community is affected by and mad at. So we're just one of the people sort of complaining, but we happen to have the megaphone, whereas the treatment in terms of our actual performance on our YouTube channels have been benefited. Like, I know for a fact I've been benefited by my relationship with Plarium that I've had in the past, and I've only really ever seen benefit if we look at it factually and objectively. Like, if we made videos on Raid without any help at all, it probably would have been worse than the help that we did receive, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to be fair and balanced, because I feel the same way that, creators are providing a significant value of Plarium, but I also want to give props where props are due, because I've been bad about doing it in the past and say that, they've provided value too.
Yeah, for sure. And to go back to what you were saying about us being kind of the arbiter of the community, I think most of the time if I'm upset about something they've done, I'm upset on behalf of the way that it affects the players that I know care more than I do. I don't know if it's because I've been a content creator for as long as I have, or I've been playing it kind of from this side as long as I have. I don't really feel affected personally by what they do in the game. I don't care, because it's all just kind of turned into content. It will be something I'll talk about. So I very rarely am personally aggravated by what they're doing from an in-game perspective. I'm aggravated on a principle level about the decisions that they make. It aggravates me that they display such a low consideration for their players and the enjoyment of the game. Like, that type of stuff annoys me, but I don't care what they do to the game from my perspective. I'm going to load it up and make a video anyway. So
you're able to have that dichotomy of separating, like, I can understand a player's perspective, but I can also see it from my point of view as a content creator, because they are different no matter, how much you look at. They are very separate things. So that's a fair estimate. I want to ask you one other question here and kind of move past the whole, ill will of Plarium and debating that side of things, because that's just one such section of it. I want to ask you, during your times of playing Raid Shadow Legends, can you compare it against another similar game and tell me something that you both think Raid Shadow Legends did significantly better, as well as something that could learn from another game?
I mean, the one I'm playing right now is Summoner's War, and that's going to be a real tough conversation for Raid. Because Summoner's War is, short of the graphics would be the argument for a lot of people, I think. But Summoner's War was the original of these games. It laid the blueprint. It's why we have Raid and all these other games now. There's a couple of things I do like better in Raid. There's minor quality of life things. In Arena, in your list, you can see all your opponents and their teams. In Summoners War, you have to click them to see the team that you want to fight, so it takes a little bit longer to go through your list. Like, there's a few minor things like that. But yeah, it's tough. I think here's one thing. I don't know how they pulled it off, but they managed to not do the same thing that all these other games do, where they fall apart after 5 or 6 months. These games, for the last couple of years, they'll launch and look like they're going to be amazing, and then I guess they start making money and freak out. I don't know what happens, but they all have a shelf life of about 4 to 6 months, and then it starts going downhill. Awakened Chaos Era did it. Infinite Magic Raid seems to be doing it. I think Eternal Evolution is still doing okay. I haven't checked in, but also it's about that time, so we'll see what happens with Eternal Evolution. But so Raid somehow, in spite of making bad decisions, it seems even, managed to keep this game alive and thriving. And I'm not real sure how they did that beyond the graphics. And part of me wants to say it can't just be that.
Can I say my take on that? Because I think I have a very strong opinion about this. I believe that gacha games need two things. They need a constant influx of new content, meaning you have to have something new to do after you've reached the end of the game fairly commonly, so that the people that have already breached most of the content have something to look forward to or a reason to continue playing and not feel like it's getting stagnant. You have to keep them within the community. Number two, gacha games are primarily fundamentally dopamine-driven games, meaning you have to have excitement and moments of peak enjoyability. I think this comes from the fact that I know this because I built my channel off of shard pose. I mean, I was one of the people who did that right in the start. There weren't very many people just going up here and doing big reactions over shard posts. And that was something that was not faked. It happened because I felt the dopamine. I was literally into the gambling of it. And it's not just like I'm pushing against pay to win and gambling and mental addiction and all these things that can happen in these games, as much as it is a fundamental point of gacha games where if you do not have that, people will not play the game or will not spend money in the game long enough. And Raid has done a perceivably good job in continuing to add new characters into the pool and also making those characters feel mostly exciting. There's a debate within the fusions not being that exciting. I think that's fair points, and I would agree with those. But when it comes to there's a new Sifi, there's Rolos, whatever, when you get that character for the first time, it is a game-changing level of dopamine where you're like, oh my God, I got the character. And then there's excitement around building them and having it, and people are giving you props, grats on your Sifi. It feels like you've just obtained a new tier of something. It's a level of accomplishment that I believe grabs you. And I think Raid has done both a good job in excitability from shard posts. They do a good visual, audio job, etc., of that actually happening, as well as continually giving us that drip of resources to be able to experience those moments, as well as having new characters so we don't run out of those experiences.
Yeah, I agree. I also feel the same way about content. I think they've maintained a pretty good pace at dropping big chunks of content. I think we had a dry spell a couple of years ago where I remember people getting aggravated that there wasn't much to do. It's not a problem anymore. They are they keep the content coming, so they definitely do some things well. I think there's an idea that I hate them and don't think they do anything good. I just think that it gets outweighed. I think the good stuff they do gets outweighed because they seem to make such blatant choices to be shitty to the players. They do things that it's like, there's no reason to even do this. I don't even understand. But I mean, they obviously do things well. I do think their graphics do them a lot of favors. I think people overlook a lot of the negative stuff because they don't want to go play another game because other games don't look like this. I do think that that's a thing. And I have, hundreds of comments on my videos that'll back that up. But that also, again, doesn't mean that I don't think they do anything well. They clearly do some stuff well. They surprised me with some of the quality of life they've added. I never thought we'd get AI programming I never thought that would happen. I never thought they'd update it. I never thought we'd get artifact sorter. They've done some big stuff that I never thought they'd do. So on that hand, it's like, why'd they do that? Because it's confusing. I don't get the impression they care about the game and about the player's quality of life and enjoyment. But then they'll do something like that. And it's like, was that to appease shareholders or was that a genuine...
Well, I'm glad you used that word because the question for me is do you feel like shareholders and consumers of the game are eternally at conflict where what they essentially have to do is appease like shareholders, investors of the company? I know there was one point that investors were even emailing out content creators wanting more perspective upon the game. Do you feel like they're in this ever cycle of strife, to pull a word from Diablo Immortal, where effectively they have to appease shareholders by ramping profitability, but anytime you do that, it affects the consumer base, so you have to have this yin-yang of sort of abusing, to use your word here, of the player base, and then at the same time having to do that in order to appease investors and profitability? And on another level, are they doing something wrong if overall their profits are going up every year?
That's the thing that I always say. I can critique all I want, but they continue to make money. So from their perspective, they're doing it right, and from the shareholders' perspective, they're doing it right. And I think what it probably boils down to is, one, I think the shareholders probably don't know what's good for the game. They know what's good for making money, and that's the priority. And, on that end, they are a business, and they should be trying to make money. And if I'm playing a game that I support, I want them to make money. But I think you got to toe the line. I think there's a line you have to try to toe in not treating your players like shit and also trying to make money. And Plarium doesn't toe it well as other games, some other games. There's just such a lack of creativity sometimes in the things that they do. The events are just so boring and uninteresting. They lean so heavily on having a fusion every month to not have to come up with something else creative to do. They started making skins, which is one of the things I was most excited about them ever doing, because if there's one thing they do that no one can even critique them on, it's visual stuff. They are fantastic at this. And then they started making skins, and they just put them in a pack by themselves for $50. They didn't add any other resources. They didn't make an event out of it. They didn't make it fun. They didn't make any of them farmable, or they just
Purely
here's a skin, it's $50.
Monetized opportunity.
Right.
That's
Nothing
all it
fun
is
or interesting about it. And it's like, and then I guess they didn't sell the way they wanted them to, so now we don't even get skins anymore. I don't remember the last time I heard something about a new skin coming to the game. That's a print money button if you only do it sort of right. And they did it so wrong that it, I guess, was a failure in their eyes.
Is it fair to say that you somewhat feel like a cattle being led to slaughter, and eventually you're getting a little bit sick of it, where you kind of feel like you're being farmed and you're willing to let that go for a while, both for the content creation as well as the player side of reasons, but at a certain point that weighs on you, almost like bad blood in a friendship, where maybe 90% of the friend's good, but that 10% that he just constantly insults you all the time or something slowly rags on you to the point where you cut off the friendship? Is that almost a fair comparison?
Somewhat. I would say ultimately it's that I feel such a lack of inspiration from them in the game, for the game. I feel that it's, 99% money. Yeah. And the health and quality of the game and the enjoyment that the longtime players at the game are getting is of no concern. They are so blatantly only concerned with new downloads. You know what I mean? Constantly dropping promo codes that only new players can get. Dropping new events that only new players can get. All this stuff that's new players. And you've got people that have been here for 4 years that have spent tens of thousands of dollars in their game, and it just seems like they don't give a shit about that. You know what I mean? Their anniversary events, where it's supposed to be, thanks for keeping us relevant for another year. Thanks for getting us to another birthday. And they put 4s in the game. And for the 3rd anniversary, they put pictures of cake in the game. Summoners War is on its 9th anniversary, and it started at the beginning of April, and it's still going on. We're on like our 6th or 7th part of the event, and it's involved a free legendary champ and tons of scrolls and resources and fun events. And now there's one where you team up with different people on your server and accumulate points together. They're really good at the events thing, but you genuinely feel appreciated when Summoners War they've got cosmetics for your island and free skins and all kinds of crazy shit going on, and it's going on for another month. And Raid put 4s in the game.
Does feeling appreciated as a player translate into you wanting to spend more money in the game?
Yeah. I've spent a decent bit in Summoner's War, and I at no point have felt like I needed to, or like I was being bullied into it, or like I was forced to. I am definitely more happy to spend money when I don't feel like I'm being positioned into it.
So is your position that honey will catch more flies than vinegar when it comes to gacha games?
To a degree, I think there's probably I think maybe the whale community might feel a little bit differently. I think the whale community doesn't care as much about that, and maybe to a degree they enjoy that because it's easier for it to be that 1%. I think the whales play a different game and they play it together. You know what I mean? In every game.
So essentially, raid is raid. From what I'm hearing, I'm just trying to reassert the position, is that raid is targeted almost at a different economic class, whereas some of these other games are targeted more for the general populace. But some of these very high-end games, I mean, Platinum Arena being one such example, are really more targeted towards people that have the ability to spend economically large amounts of income on these types of games.
I don't know. Maybe that's their angle, but I think listening to the whales talk about what the end game is like, I don't think they're super satisfied with the state of the game either. So I think that's what I mean. It's like they don't. Plarium doesn't even know how to keep the crowd happy. The different crowds happy. They just want to drive new downloads. There's a lot of things that need doing to the end game. There's a lot of things that need doing to the mid game. The game needs attention that it's not getting because it's all about new player promo codes and downloads, and I'm guessing that's a huge metric for the shareholders. I'm not really sure, but
so then let's close it on this. If you had to look back with your experience, both as a content creator who has experienced a vast amount of feedback, as your experience of a longtime veteran player, both free to play as well, if you had to look back and say, I give one piece of advice towards Plarium, and it can be generic, it can be broad reaching if you need it to be, just one piece that really comes to your mind first when I ask you this question, without thinking about too much, what's the bit that's coming to your head?
Focus on making the game good.
Focus on
Change
making
your
the game
focus. Improve the quality of the game. Make your players happier.
So sort of a reverse mindset of don't think how can we monetize more and then build content around that. Instead, build the content itself and let monetization opportunities be produced by the value the game is incentivizing.
I think just focus maybe a little less on the monetization, or don't be so aggressive. Be a little bit more, have a little bit more tact in your efforts to monetize.
That is a fantastic point. Let's end it on that. Have a little bit more tact with your essence, your opportunities to monetize. I'm struggling through your words here, but I'm thinking that is a very astute way to put it, because Plarium is nothing if they're not blunt when it comes to the offer packs. The second you're into the game, they're instantly popping up. It's very obvious when they're attempting to monetize something, and very often that can lead to negative feelings. So, Jgigs, I want to thank you for your time and some very astute answers. Where can we follow you, and what new do you have going on lately? Go ahead and fill the air with what's going on with you.
I think if I'm going to plug one thing, I've got a comedy channel that has nothing to do with games or raid or anything. It's just comedy / commentary stuff that I'm working on getting partnered with YouTube. So I think that's probably the one thing I would plug if I'm going to plug something.
Okay.
And it's just, I don't know if you can find it with a search. I'll come in the comments and drop a link or something.
We'll put that, Jgigs will put the link to his channel. I'll pin that comment. Jgigs, you already know this, but you've always been my favorite guy to work with. So I appreciate, coming on the video and answering some questions, and hopefully we can figure out how to make some content together on the game that we can both cover at some point in the future. So I love you, brother, and we will see you all on the next video.
Later.
You can get your hands on royalty-free music like we have on this video right here. Shout out to Soundstripe for sponsoring this channel, and get your hands on royalty-free music when you use code DARTH for a discount.